Hi, welcome back to another segment of At the Table with Shirley. I'm Shirley Chancellor, pastor of Lighthouse Christian Church in Bismarck, Arkansas, and welcome back. Thank you for joining me again. Today's topic is a little controversial, maybe, but it's we tolerate too much. And we do, don't we? Sometimes as believers, we find ourselves either not saying anything or not reacting to something that goes totally against our faith base when we really should be speaking up or taking action, if nothing else, just leaving the area, walking away. But we have tolerated as the body of Christ. I'm going to clump us all as a whole right now. So take a minute to have patience with me. But in the last few years, we have certainly tolerated more than we should have, haven't we? We've seen, especially our nation, and of course nations all around the world, but just speaking to our nation, we've seen the erosion and the decay of our Christian faith-based nation just crumble before our very eyes. Someone shared with me recently where they were offering at a school, not in our state, thank God, but after school Satan program, come and learn to worship Satan for an elementary school. How disgusting. How you wonder, how can the people in that area tolerate such a thing, that to have their children subjected to something like that? Now, I suppose right now they probably have a choice to go or not, but there are also many things being shown our children and taught to our children during the school day without parents' knowledge. But it's out there now. People are finding out about it. How much real rising up against this do you see? I know there are a lot of ministries having prayer and having fasting and really going to battle. I've joined in on some of those for our nation. But we need to do that. We need to get this phrase stuck in our minds: do not comply. Because what's coming down the pike, guys, we may have to really stand firm on some things that we've never stood firm on before. But bringing it back to a very personal level and a church level, individual church level, we need to think about how God feels about it. If we're not standing up against evil. I know we're supposed to love everyone, whether they're involved in sin or not involved in sin, but it doesn't mean that we should condone it or that we should engage with it or tolerate it, which we have done in great ways. And we see a lot of God's protection being withheld from our nation because of it, haven't we? Proverbs 25:26 says, when a lover of God gives in and compromises with wickedness, it can be compared to contaminating a stream with sewage or polluting a fountain. Wow. Our giving in or compromising in God's eyes is the same as throwing sewage in our drinking water. That's pretty bad. That's pretty filthy. That's pretty disgusting, isn't it, in God's eyes? In Daniel 6:10, even after Daniel learned that the king had officially signed his decree, he continued in his regular custom of praying at 3 times a day. He went to the upper chamber of his house and opened the window facing Jerusalem. Then he got down on his knees to pray, and he offered his grateful praise to God as he had always done. I know many of you are familiar with the story of Daniel in the lion's den. The king had signed a decree saying that everyone should worship him or an image of him, and Daniel refused to do it. He went on worshiping his God, our God, the way he had always done, and eventually, as the story goes, he was thrown into the lion's den because of it. Of course, God shut the mouths of the lion, and he was not harmed, and he was taken out the next day and even given a higher position of authority. And those who had accused him and told on him to the king, they and their families were actually thrown into the lion's den and devoured. So God will protect us if we stand up for what's right. He will cover us. He will cover our families, our businesses, our homes, our churches, our territory, if we trust him. Proverbs 17:15. There is nothing God hates more than condemning the one who is innocent and acquitting the one who is guilty. Does that sound familiar? Condemning the one who is innocent and acquitting the one who is guilty. Do we see that happening in our nation? Oh my goodness. We have people who innocently visited Washington, D.C. on January the 6th, several years ago, and they were put in prison for that, just for being on the premises. And they have not been given due process. They haven't been allowed to see families. They're living in horrible conditions, from what I understand. But yet there are many proven guilty in our government who are getting away with literally murder of us, murder of people, murdering of America. We've seen a flood of this in recent years. So when will the church stand up and say, we have tolerated too much? We will not comply. Even within our own families, our own churches, our own communities, we need to be the beacon. We need to be the lighthouse on the hill, which is why we named our church Lighthouse, and we are on a hill. We need to be the example of discipleship, of leading the way and standing up for God's way, because he says it should be on earth as it is in heaven. If it isn't happening in heaven, it shouldn't be happening here. Well, thank you for joining me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Be kind, though. I would love to hear your thoughts. And I will see you next time. Bye.